Welcome everyone to our Microsoft Teams and O365 open forum question and answer session. My name is Nathan Austin. I'm a VP of Business Development at MyTech Partners, and this is one of my favorite things I get to do. We also have Gerald Howland on the phone, who's our CTO at MyTech. Gerald, you want to say hi?
Hello, everybody.
All right, so today the intent is we know that there are a lot of people that have a lot of questions about Office 365, and we have some prescriptive items kind of teed up that we can go through, but we want to balance that between questions coming from the audience. So please use the Q&A panel on the side of your screen, and Stephanie is going to interject questions, and we will do our best to just show you how to walk through some of those things, the questions, and actually demonstrate how to walk through it. So this session is being recorded, so we will make it available for future use. So please, at the moment, go ahead and start adding questions to the Q&A panel. And Stephanie doesn't make those public unless it's applicable to everyone. So you might not see other people's questions going there, but please go ahead, go into the Q&A panel and add your questions about just anything relative to Microsoft Teams, O365 tools, questions you might have. And by the way, no question is too, if you might think it's a dumb question, a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to ask a dumb question. I promise you, if you have a question about it, there's a lot of people that have questions on it. So please, even if you think it's really simple, please ask the question. So thank you very much for that. So before we get going, I do always like to touch a little bit about MyTech, only because we are not a training company, but this is something we work to do for our clients to help them use these tools better. One of the things we found about 2 years ago that there were a lot of companies using Office 365 and they were paying for these tools, but they weren't actually using them. So this is one of our initiatives as part of our mission, which is to grow, help, and make a difference. We want to help anybody in our communities, anybody in the small business community or nonprofit community to use these tools better. And part of that is it's one of our ways where we try and help remove IT challenges for everybody, because right now it's pretty obvious, but we all have a lot of other things that we're working on and dealing with, and we just don't need technology to be one of those obstacles. So this is one of our ways to try and help remove those challenges so you can focus on other issues that you need to work on as your business or personal. And finally, our goal is to make IT easy for our clients. We hope this is one of the ways we do that. And we want to drive 4 times more value and productivity from our clients' IT investments. So if that resonates with you, if there's anything we do to help, we're happy to help. Otherwise, we're going to dig right into this session. So we're going to show you how to, and we're going to, what are the Teams in O365 questions? And like I said, if we don't have any questions from the audience, we will go ahead and have a long list of things that we can kind of walk through that might queue up some other questions as well. So with that said, Stephanie, do we have any questions from the audience?
We do have one.
Awesome.
It's from Angie. Said, I would like to get your opinion on creating private channels within a team. I know this is an option, but I'm interested in use cases and or if it's suggested or not.
That is a great question. I'm going to switch over to Teams. So the question is about private channels. So if I may start for everybody else listening in, I'll start by showing how you can go through and create a channel in the first place. So this is at this parent level in Teams. So we're in the Teams tab of Teams. These are some demo teams that we've created for this for the open forum and for these training sessions. And so this underneath here is called a channel. So this is the operations team, and under this team, this is the general channel. So if you want to create a private channel to the question, you click on the ellipse, and I know that creating it isn't the question, but you can add a channel. So you can title it what you'd like, but then right here under privacy, you can choose either standard or private. So let's talk about the concept behind that. I'm going to cancel that. I'm not going to create it. But basically what that does is at the operations team level, so at each team level, you define who has access to that respective team. And by default, so that's important to know, so who has access. If you want to learn who has access, click on the ellipse and go to Manage Team. And this will tell you who is the owner of the team and who is a member of the team. So here I can add a member. I'm going to add Stephanie to this. So I'm going to add Stephanie right here. I'm going to add Stephanie to this team because I'm an owner. I can add Stephanie and I can designate her as an owner or a member of that team right here. So by default, if I went and took and created a new team or a new channel, excuse me, if I created a new channel under the operations team, by default, everyone here is going to have access to that channel. So the question is, if you create a private team, what are the use case scenarios where you might want to have a private channel where we could create a private channel. In fact, I'll go through and do that now just to show you an example. So add a channel. I'm going to call it, I'll call it comp plan collaboration. All right. I'm going to make this a private channel because I don't necessarily want everyone in the operations team to collaborate on comp plans. I want to keep that confidential between leadership and management. So I'm going to go next. And then it's going to create the channel, and then it's going to say, well, this is a private channel, so only people you add here will see it. So by default, if I created it, it's only going to add me. So I'm going to add Gerald, just because Gerald is part of the operations team in our company. So I will kind of add him to that list. I'm just going to add Gerald. So now you notice that another channel has been created. You'll see this little lock next to it. Now this will only appear to those who have access to that channel. So if you see the lock, that means that that means you have access to the channel. Otherwise, you will not see this channel at all. And so now this would allow Gerald and I, in this instance, to be able to share files. I don't have any files in here because I just created it, but we could share files, share commentary on this channel without the rest of the operations team having access to it. So that's one of the use cases where you might have, so for instance, one of the use cases that we have is we have our sales team, and our sales team is applicable to, we have 2 locations. So we have teams in each location, but at the leadership level, we have a private channel that is just for the general managers and just for sales managers, and also then for me as the person who's responsible for that team at a corporate level. So we have 5 people in that private channel to collaborate on team comp, to collaborate on just other document templates that are applicable to the team and training templates that are applicable. Like, it's a place for us to collaborate before we release it into production. I think that's the biggest use case that I've seen out of using private channels, is it's a very easy way for you as a manager or a leader to be able to have a place without having to go to IT and have to like say, hey, I want a special place for just these 3 people to collaborate. But if you're an owner of one of these teams, you have the ability to create that private channel, and it gives you a place where you can collaborate in conversation and on documents, just like you can in other aspects of teams, without making that completely public or production to the other members of, say in this example, the operations team. So I hope that answers, at least gives you a couple of use cases as far as why you might choose to do a private team, private channel, excuse me, than a general channel.
Awesome. All right, next one. If I invite people outside of my organization to a Teams meeting and they do not have speakers or a microphone, can they call in? They probably would be able, that's a good question. They probably would be able to call in, but because they don't have speakers or a microphone, they wouldn't really be able to do anything but watch. However, they might, I can't demonstrate this. I wonder if I can demonstrate this. Maybe I can. Hold on one second. Regarding to like dial in, like can they call?
Oh, like calling in.
Yeah.
Good question. So here, I'll show you an example as we've created these invitations. I think, hold on a second, as we've created these open forum invitations. So here, I'm going to open up one of these. So this, for instance, when we created this event, we created out of Teams. And so it says join live event as a link, and it also provides a dial-in number. However, this dial-in number is only available if you're subscribing to the E5 suite. And Gerald, correct me if I'm wrong on that. Can you elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, so you do need the E5 suite in order for you to have the calling capabilities. You need the phone features of Teams to be added, and that's an E5 feature.
Now, Gerald, one of the things people might be thinking, like, well, does that mean everyone in my organization? Or if I'm the organizer, could I just be licensed with E5 and be able to use this, or does everyone in the organization have to have it?
So only the people that are planning the events that want to have the call-in information need to have that license. So not everybody in the organization is necessary for it. The one kind of catch-22 to that is that there are only so many minutes added per license. So they do fall into a pool. So the more people you have in your E5 licensing scheme gives you more minutes in total for conferences.
All right, so I want to show another feature that might be applicable for this situation. And forgive me, Stephanie, I'm going to switch to the open forum if I can. So one of the things you might be able to see, I'm trying to see if I can, this is the Teams event. So I'm trying to see if there's, I can't do it. Sorry, I was going to show, I'm going to try and do this. I'm going to try and show something else here. I wonder if I might be able to join. It might not enable me to do this. I'm going to try it. I hope it doesn't kick me off this call. I think it's going to if I click this.
I think it's going to.
So I'm not going to do that. But when you're in a call, you'll see these little, I'm going to go back to the Teams. When you're in a call, and so let's say if this is my window and I'm in a call, I'd be able to hover down over my call, and an ellipse will show up. And the ellipse looks just like this, or the breadcrumbs. You'll see a little menu option like this, which many of you should probably see on your screen right now if you just hover your mouse over it. So you'll see a little ellipse, except the ellipse here, it'll exist right down here in the kind of the call section where you could, next to where you can hang up. If you click on that, there's an option to turn on closed captioning. So that might be an option. That's in beta right now, but Microsoft has released it. It works pretty well. It's not perfect at the moment. Like I said, it's kind of in beta and pilot mode right now, but they have released it in general to kind of improve the way it works. So that might be an option for someone that doesn't have speakers or a microphone, where they could potentially still view and then at least read the captions of what's going on in the meeting. But I probably wouldn't rely on that. I'd probably try and see if they can plug in some external speakers or something like that, or plug in just, even if they had their like cell phone earbuds that they could plug into their computer, that would also work as well. Any other questions, Stephanie?
One of the attendees just commented that it would probably put you on hold if you were to start another call right now.
I think so. I think it would.
Yeah. Yep.
I've had that happen before. I was hoping that maybe we're using a different feature of Teams, which is the, I'll show you everyone. It's the live event feature. So I was thinking maybe it wouldn't put me on hold because we're using a different feature, but I'm sure it probably would. So
we'll test it offline.
Yeah, we will. Exactly.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. Next question. How do I invite only a few members of the team and not the entire team when scheduling a team meeting in a channel? I have noticed that the entire team receives an invite to the meeting, even though I didn't add them to the meeting invite.
Yeah, so that is a great question. So here's a couple things about scheduling meeting invites. So, and I'll show you, and we actually have a session that we're doing not next week, but the week after, that's specifically going to talk about 5 ways to create and schedule and hold Teams meetings, because there are about 5 different ways to do it. So I'll specifically address your question right now without going into all those different ways. So there's a couple things. One, if you go to your calendar, so on the Teams side, if you go to your calendar, you can schedule a meeting. So I'll just click this. I'm going to schedule a new meeting. And what you can do is, instead of, you can just add required attendees, right? So you could just add, I could add Stephanie right here, and I can add Gerald if this is who I wanted to add, right? So that's how you can schedule meetings, and then it will just send it to those individual folks. I'm going to close that, but here, what you're probably doing is that if you're inside of Teams, so for instance, if you want to start a meeting, down at the bottom, you'll see a little icon that if you hover over it, and I know that's small on the screen here, it says Meet Now. It's a little bit of a misnomer because when you click on it, it doesn't actually force you to meet now. It wants you to, you could either click meet now or you could schedule the meeting. So this is, and I'll show you why I'm illustrating this. So I'll say team meeting. I'll just title that. One of the things I do like putting this little title in here, because then it gives you a historical reference as a kind of a subject in your conversation. So instead of saying meet now, which as we discussed will probably put me on hold, we're going to do schedule meeting. But notice it automatically defaults to the operations team general channel, because that's the channel I was in when I chose to schedule the meeting. So by default, if you're scheduling the meeting from within a channel, it will invite everyone who is a member of this team. Okay, so if you do not want that to be the case, you can either delete this and then just add the respective attendees right here. All right. That's probably how I do it. There's only one other way that I would, that might be, one of the ways you could do that too is you could create, so I've got a chat here with Stephanie and Gerald. Here's what I'm gonna do. I have Stephanie here. I'm gonna add over here in the corner, one of the things I could do is I could say, hey, Stephanie, I'm gonna add Gerald to the conversation. All right, I'm gonna add him. And now notice it started a new conversation. So now that I've got Stephanie and Gerald in it, I could actually just call them right here, and you could specify in the meeting, hey, we're going to meet in our chat. So that's one of the ways in which I could call, and it would call Gerald and Stephanie, and then it would put all three of us on hold at the moment. So I'm not going to do that, but those are a few different ways in which you can. I'm just going to. Hello, just to kind of get that chat going. Those are a few different ways in which, if you want to invite a subset of the members of a team versus the entire team itself, those are quick and easy ways to do that.
Awesome. All right, next question. Can Teams video calls be used effectively as a remote support connection for end users with screen sharing? Are there limitations such as the ability to elevate to administrative privileges?
Gerald, do you want to take that one? Because I think the first part of that question is yes, you can definitely use it for remote screen sharing. If you're connected and you're on a chat, and you this is one of the things you can do here is you can hit screen share, and you could actually screen share, and when you do that, you can request control so that you could actually be either seeing what the other person's doing, or you could be request control, so you could actually be taking over their mouse. But the last part of the question, it's a little more technical. I'm not sure the answer to that question, Gerald.
So ultimately, yes. The function, basically, you would want to run an application or a feature in administrative mode. So you'd basically be launching it and telling it to run as a different user. A little bit technical in this scenario, but you could use like a run as command prompt to have it run as a user with administrative privileges, or even prompt it to run as admin, which would then, if the user is not capable of having admin privileges, would then request login to an administrative account. So yes, it can be done. The big thing is you are not going to be able to log out of the session. You will be, the Teams meeting has to stay active in order, or the Teams application needs to stay active in order for you to be able to remote control that desktop.
Yeah, good point. You won't be able to log out and log back in. That'll disconnect the session. Yep.
All right, next question. When we did a Teams meeting the other day, only 4 staff showed up during the meeting. One person was always off screen. Can you have more than 4 people in a meeting?
So I think what you're referring to is when you do a Teams video call, it typically only presents someone up. It gives basically in the 4 corners of the screen it shows video. It'll show a bunch of lists of the people at the bottom, but I guess it might be interesting to ask, is the question associated with seeing more than 4 people in the meeting, or can more than 4 people join the meeting? Because if more than 4 people can definitely join the meeting, and then you can also easily record a meeting, like this is being recorded, for instance. There's a really easy way to do that because people don't always make all the meetings and they might have to reference that. But by default, Teams, I think, and Gerald, correct me if I'm wrong, if this is a setting, only shows 4 videos of 4 images as opposed to, say, 50 images or 10 images or whatever.
Yeah, so Microsoft actually just started rolling out the feature to add more than 4 people to the main screen. and had to roll it back because of the current COVID scenarios. So they and the bandwidth requirements of having more than 4 people on the screen. So currently they have kind of rolled that back as a feature, but it is on the roadmap, and we look forward to seeing it again. The other part of it is it also, so it displays the 4 last communicators, so the 4 people that talked last, and then everybody else kind of shows up across the bottom. Currently they show up as just little icons, but
kind of like this. They'll show you a little image icon here like this.
Yep. But they were, as part of that rollout, they were also changing that over to little snippets of video for each of those people also. So as of right now, because of the bandwidth restrictions and the growth rates that they've seen in Teams usage, they have rolled that feature back, but it is going to come back at some point in time.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that, as you queue up the next question, Stephanie, is that so if you have these images on your screen, again, when you hover over them, you'll see a little indicator of their name, whether or not they're muted, and then you'll see a little ellipse or a little breadcrumb, and it's usually like in the lower corner like this of the video's image. One of the things you can do is if you click on the ellipse, it gives you more options, and you can actually pin that particular video. You can pin that image to that spot. So one of the questions I had the other day was, I wanted to see, there's a couple people I wanted to keep on my view, but it kept changing based on what Gerald just said around the last person that speaks is what it does. It brings that forward. So you can pin those images though, if that's something you'd like to be able to do.
Awesome. There's no new questions as of now.
Okay, awesome. Well then, one of the things that I wanted to show, and I wanted to go back to the Teams invitation question. So I'm actually going to go back to the calendar in Outlook. One of the things that you can do to either add people to Teams, whether it's internal or external. So a lot of the ways that we just showed when we talked through in creating a Teams meeting inside of Teams is one way, but in your Outlook, one of the things, if you get into your calendar, you can actually just right at the top say, I want a new Teams meeting. You click on that and you'll notice it'll populate your calendar with this information. And then you could send this to internal or external resources. So this could be a way in which you schedule, again, just internal folks. Although I would, if you're going to be in a channel, I would do it inside of a channel like we illustrated earlier. But this is a quick and easy way in which you can schedule, you can send this to folks, and people do not have to have the Teams application in order for them to join. They don't have to have a Teams login or a Microsoft login. It's just like logging into a web browser, and they can access it. Now, the only thing that if people don't have the Teams application, they're not going to be able to present information, so they wouldn't be able to share their screen. At least that was the limitation that I ran across not too long ago. Teams is always updating, so that might change over time. But this is a quick and easy way. I'll illustrate that again. Right, if you're in Outlook, click on the calendar. So you're in the calendar view, right up at the top. You could do a new Teams meeting. The other way that you can do it is say, I want to do a new meeting. And then right at the top, you can say, I want to make this a Teams meeting. So if you didn't click Teams meeting and you wanted to make it one, you could just click this button here and it populates its information. And same way, basically it gives you the same option, whether you click here or click here when you're creating the calendar invite. So that was one of the things I wanted to illustrate, because it's a very common use of Teams, especially when if you have Teams and you're trying to collaborate virtually with folks, it's a real quick and easy way to send that information out. To be able to virtually collaborate with folks. And then the last thing on that we're finding that some people, if they're forwarding their phones, like from their office phone to their cell phones, it's using up your phone lines and you might be getting busy signals. I know we experienced that as we had to send our engineers home. And so we've been encouraging our team to actually use this feature that we just illustrated to take off some of the burden of your phone lines that might be coming through your office.
Nate, can you clarify what license is required for the Outlook Calendar Join Teams meeting option?
Great question. So to do what I just showed, so again, I'll click New Teams Meeting. You just need to have Teams, and that is fine. But earlier we talked about this feature right here. To be able to have a dial-in number presented is when you would need the E5 SKU. But if you did not have the E5 SKU, and you do see this this option in your calendar, you will just get a link. So the link just works great, just like what everyone did in order to join this session today. You just would not, if you don't have the E5 SKU, this will not populate. That's the only difference. You just won't see a dial-in number for you to call.
Awesome. Another question. Is there a way we can set some members to view only on some channels or even at the team level?
Gerald, I think the answer to that is no, but do you want to elaborate?
So you can set up, if you want to go ahead and open up a channel permissions. So if you actually edit a channel, Nate,
edit the team?
but edit it, actually go to the channel instead of the team. Go to
the channel. I'm sorry. Yes.
Channel.
Yep.
So what you can do is you can do it on a team level also, but you can actually say who is allowed to post messages. So you can make them so that they're read only by saying that only owners can post messages, and then people that are owners of that team can post, and that's it. So it kind of the best way, and you can do that even for a team. So you can say for any channel, you can say people are only allowed to post messages or only allowed to read. Only owners can post. You can specify who can create channels. You do have some controls over that. I do believe the one kind of catch-22 to that is files are still in a collaboration mode, so they're not read-only. So if you place a file in there, anybody who has access to the team can read and modify the file.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the things that if you go back to the private channel question that we had, or at least saying that you have documents that you don't want in production where you want to collaborate, that would be a use case of saying, well, let's keep these documents where I'm collaborating that here, and then when I publish them to say where everyone can have access to them here versus in the collaboration section, is that I might turn them into a PDF or use a document template. So if I have a Word document that I intend to be a template for people to use, maybe you make it a PDF, or maybe you make it use it actually as a document template that requires people to save as when you do that. So that's one of the ways in which you can somewhat at the file level enforce view only, or they have to do a save as if they're going to do that too. So good question.
All right, there's no new questions as of right now.
All right, well, we've got a few more minutes. So one of the things that I illustrated yesterday in the Teams channel, so for instance, in our general channel here, I created an issues list. And this is right into SharePoint. So one of the things that I wanted to show is that I'm going to open this in SharePoint, because when you create to create a new list, one of the things that I didn't show this yesterday is that, so if you're at the, I opened in the operations team, so notice in Teams, I'm illustrating the operations team, which the operations team then has an operations team SharePoint site. So I'm in the corresponding SharePoint site as to the team structure. And if you're on the home, which I haven't really done any customization here at all, other than add some folders as you see over here, is that if you click new, one of the things you can do, these are the options you have to if you want to create something new. So all I did is create a new list, and then I can name the list. I'll just talk I'll just say a parking board items create. And notice I say show in site navigation, so that's actually going to show up over here. Some of the issues and discussion list, and the parking board items are here. This is actually how I started this process, and then I was able to do some customizations to the columns to be able to have something like this, where I added who is it submitted by, date submitted. I was able to add some customizations here, but the way you start, and so this is what it looks like when it's raw, but when you start that, you have to go to the operations team, home, or wherever site that you're trying to create that in, and you create new, and you can create that list. And the purpose for that list is to be able to potentially do something like this, where you can have people on your team be able to post issues that they want to talk about at your next team meeting. And that's just kind of a simple way to be able to add that to your equation. And then if you want to add it, I'll just show it again. If you want to add that to your tabs here at the top, you can hit this little plus icon. And you can say, I want to add SharePoint. And you say, do you want to add a page or a list? I want to click list. And now notice I've already added the issues list, but my parking board items is now an option. So I select that, and I'm going to hit save. And now I have my parking board items also added to my tab that I can access. So those are just a couple quick tips as far as how to create a list. I didn't show that yesterday when we talked about running this for your team meeting, but that was something that I thought I wanted to illustrate because it does take a couple steps in order to be able to go into your run a team meeting, and actually have your lists display here inside of your team's view.
There's a couple more questions here if we can knock those out before the
Sure.
end. So if you link a team to an existing SharePoint team site, does it take on the permissions of that SharePoint site, or does the team have its own set of permissions?
That's a great question. So I'm going to start by saying, and then Gerald, I'm going to hand this over to you. I'll start by saying when you create, this is kind of a public service announcement around Teams if you haven't already heard this message. When you create a team, it by default creates a corresponding SharePoint site. So, and the permissions flow with that, right? So when you create a team, so a sales team, marketing team, you're also creating a corresponding SharePoint site with corresponding permissions of the members of that respective team. And that applies to all of the sub channels other than private channels, right? So again, excluding private channels from that, but it applies to all the sub channels as well. So, but I know you can link existing sites to teams, but Gerald, can you talk about that and the associated permissions?
Yeah, so if you, much like you were just discussing about creating a Microsoft team creates a SharePoint site utilizing that same 365 group, same thing happens when you create a SharePoint team site. You are creating that same group structure to manage that. So I can't say this for certain, but I'm nearly sure that by creating a team to that SharePoint site, you are just linking the two together. So we can test it and kind of give some feedback, but I'm pretty certain that that's exactly what happens.
Well, and one of the ways that might be interesting, if you notice, if you do that, and if you go to the team and click on the ellipse and go to manage team, you should see, I mean, this should probably show the right membership, right? So you should be able to see that as far as whether or not that permissioning actually did merge together. All right,
awesome. There's
next
one
question,
more
Stephanie?
question here. Yep, there's one more here. It says, how can we automatically clear notifications from appearing for past events?
Clear notifications for, clear them from past events. I'm not sure if I totally understand the question, so I'll answer in one way. Gerald, if there's anything else you can think of, please know. So one of the things about Teams, similar to how you can have Outlook notifications, so if you get a new email and you might get a little pop-up down here in the lower corner of your screen, Teams can do the same thing, so you can manage that. I believe that's where you can actually manage your settings up here and notifications. So you can choose your notifications. I'll go that, I know I went there quickly. So you basically, when you hover up, you know, your initials will be up here, or your picture if you've added a picture. If you go to settings, and then under settings, there's a notifications. This is where you can actually set what notifications you want to receive. So that's at least where you can set those settings in the first place. And then one of the things that I really like about Teams is that you might be a member of multiple teams like this. You might have multiple chats, multiple conversations you're trying to follow, but it does a good job of, in the activity icon here, tab, it'll actually list the things and it'll bold the things that are new. So if you have anything from the past or any comments that are coming in, you'll have a history of any of the stuff that's new, kind of like an email that's unread in your inbox. And so that way, instead of having to navigate between the chat and Teams tab to figure that all out, you could actually just click on the activity tab. And this is actually where you can see any of the activities that you've missed and without having to click back and forth between different screens. So that's one of the things I use. I don't think it directly answers the question of clearing past activities.
They clarified the question a little bit. So like during this event, you had a notification pop up that it was 29 minutes past due. If it's past due, I don't want to see it.
I'm wondering are you talking about, it's probably this one is probably what it was. I had this, my Outlook calendar pop up. So I
don't know of a way to do that.
Yeah.
Honestly.
The only thing that I have done before, so like for instance, I can tell you, I don't know if you're trying to like have that not pop up when you're in a session like this, where you're trying to share your screen and maybe you're on a meeting and you're sharing your screen, and you don't want that pop-up to happen. The only thing that I've done is I would make sure that your Outlook is closed. That's one thing that I've definitely done to make sure you don't get some random pop-ups. The other thing that I do with Teams, the other day, maybe a potential use case for this is I was really trying to focus. I had a deadline. I was really trying to focus on getting something done, and I kept getting disrupted by my Teams notifications that kept popping up. So one of the things that I did is I actually went up here and I changed my status here to do not disturb. And when I do that, it actually it basically blocks any of those notifications from coming until either I change my status to available or I reset my status. Because right now it will dynamically identify what you're doing because I'm presenting. It already knows that. If I'm in a phone call, it knows that. If I have a meeting on my calendar, it knows that. But if I want to block something, I can actually say do not disturb because I'm trying to focus on something else, and then it'll block notifications. So that'll only happen inside of Teams though. That's not like computer wide or like any of your applications you may have opened. That's just inside of Teams. Hopefully that was helpful.
That's it for
All right.
now.
Okay, well, I'm going to then switch to some recommended action items. One, if any, for those who are still on the line right now, so sorry we ran a little long, but you know this is the idea of this is a Q&A, so hopefully we wanted to answer as many questions as possible. But I do recommend writing down 1 to 5 of the takeaways. Anything you got out of this meeting that you think is applicable, write it down now so you don't forget it. Try to actually use it and take some baby steps in the next 24 to 48 business hours. So you know either today or Monday or Tuesday next week. And then for everyone, we are holding prescriptive more presentation of specific content on Tuesdays and Thursdays moving forward, and then on Fridays next Friday is another open forum like this. So I'm hoping that you try and use these things that we covered today, or use the things that we're going to cover next Tuesday and Thursday, and come back next Friday with questions you have, and we will be able to help you clarify or help you take those next steps for you. So that's what we've got. Thank you all very much for attending, and we'll see you next week.